Hey guys, so in part 3 of this video, we're starting on the second expansion book. And like I mentioned previously, even though this is the deluxe edition that combines both the core book with the hero expansion, which is one book, and the expansion 2 book, which is a separate book in one, we're going to refer to them as separate books. So this would be the second book, the expansion 2 book. And this one really focuses on the GM, the game master, how they're going to be doing world building and things of that sort, and helping them create atmosphere for the players to play in. So it has the introduction, it's just welcoming you back, letting you know that you already learned things from this point, and that this book is focusing on for the GM and how they're going to be building their world. Then you jump right into world building, and it lets you know what that means, setting the environments and whatnot. And then letting you also know too the climate that you're setting for things, along with the type of people that will go into it. And it references that these are general people for a more of like just a regular basic modern time, but you can adjust and make your own kind of characters for specialized times, whether it's post-apocalyptic, whether it's like ancient times, or whatever the case is. But this is NPCs, which those people who don't know, it breaks it down in here, but means non-player characters, or the characters who the game master will be using as just to populate the world. This gives you a quick reference to populate your world with some general stats of a regular civilian, a cop, a thug, a soldier, a ninja. And obviously you can modify those things for other things, like maybe the thug, you want to make them a little bit better for the mob boss or something like that. Here goes some setting examples, and this will help you in terms of getting an idea of like the environments you want to create. Let you know things like post-apocalyptic is the future, the setting climate, it lets you know wasteland, a little civil society left, blah blah. So each one has a kind of breakdown of what it represents. Most of us knows what that means anyway, but yes. And obviously modern heroes is like the classic that you may want to really build like a big world, living world, since obviously the previous book is the hero expansion, and this still dives heavy into the hero kind of settings and stuff like that inside this book. So maybe you want to build up a world, a very living world where the players come back to it, and you got a bunch of superheroes and other villains in it that the players don't play, but they interact with. So it's up to you. You could build it for any type of world, but specifically a hero, superhero world, might be something that would be fun to do that with. Then you also have the golden age, any kind of setting that you want to make up that's not here. These are just suggestions, but you have the golden age, 1940 1970, type of thing. Maybe similar to like the Incredibles movie, where like things are not over the top. Then hero level settings that kind of street level, setting certain parameters like suggested power levels. Class 3 is the maximum. It's pretty much trying to say that just starting off, maybe you want to do a street level game where people are just fighting like common thugs on the street, mob bosses, doing more detective work rather than just running in and busting in places. So they got to kind of be more like stealthy. And in that case, you're making it where no one goes past a class 3, and you're also eliminating certain powers they could choose. Like rarely would someone at this level have reality and time manipulation powers. So it's just a guide to kind of help you, like, okay, like mid superhuman level, class 5 is the maximum. It's just a guide to kind of help you, level out your game, so you don't have guys who, players that are too powerful when they're, running into your world, because you don't want to have certain people who are so powerful that you're playing a game where you're fighting regular henchmen and, someone's doing too much stuff. Now here, going to weapons, I mentioned in part 1 about how the core book has broke down damages that weapons fall into those categories. Here we have some examples of actual weapons that were made up that you could play. They're fictional weapons, but the type of weapon is real, but the name of it is a fictional weapon. We start off with firearms. So you have things like the MP Cult, and you got the MP Crew. You got the Wingman, which is, these two are machine guns. One's a better machine gun than the other. This one right here is the Wingman and Sidekick are two handguns. One is black in coloring, one is silver in coloring. And just to give you an idea, it breaks down the description of the weapon in terms of for the player's information, but then the italics gives you a sense of role-playing description of it. So for example, it says for the MP Colt, which is the better machine gun, it says, "This is the gold standard for professionals. It is quite expensive even on the black market, so you will almost never find it in the hands of criminals. This high quality firearm comes standard with many higher end features and tends to never jam. So that's kind of giving you a sense of like in game, the way the people view it, the way like, if criminals buy it or whatever the case is, so yeah. You can look upon these, whatever the case is. I'm not going to read through them all, but in terms of the whole like details of them all, then you got the showstopper, which is a shotgun. You got the spindle, which is a revolver. You got the Fisker rifle, which is like a cheap, like slow rifle, like one of those kind of you'd use for like hunting or something like that. You got the slow stopper, which is like a lesser version of a shotgun than the other one. Is more a traditional shotgun, while the other one's more of like an auto kind of shotgun. You got your Stinger, which is like a little pocket gun that doesn't even do very good damage. D10. The Wildflower, which is a grenade launcher, and then you have the Mini Wild, which is a grenade launcher attachment that would go on a machine gun. And like I say, each of them has their little description in italics to let you know how it is in game or in role playing kind of standards of what it is like on the market and stuff like that. Then you have other weapons. It is where we start going into other types of weapons, specifically things that are kind of catered to superheroes, because that was like the idea with this. And you can it gives you an idea how you can make weapons, but then it's just a suggestion. You can end up making other things you want or going along with these. You have throwing knives, which would include things like ninja stars fall into this category, just as a way to kind of like give you an idea in the difference between how they work. For example, in the italics here, throwing knives or shurikens usually have a one-time use lifespan, as they tend to damage once they hit their target. So it's like trying to differentiate the difference between a throwing knife versus like say a real hand knife that you would use whatnot. And these are just little basic things to kind of spice up the game a little bit. If a game master wants to let you use your throwing knife multiple times, then that's up to you. But sometimes you might want to make that difference. So when you go to the store to buy weapons, you go, okay, I want a couple throwing knives, and maybe I want to have one kind of like military knife, because that I can kind of use multiple times. However someone wants to customize it. Modern compound bow, think in your mind of like the archers, or like Hawkeye or Green Arrow, whatever the case is. That's going to have the ability to attach certain things to it, like maybe a red dot aim and scope and all these other kind of things, whatever the case is, whatever the GM wants to allow them to do. And you have special arrows, which dives into a whole list of special arrows here. Explosive arrows, poison arrows, cryo arrows. You can make up all other type of ones that you want to do, catering to the whole superhero genre. You have the bow staff, but this is like a specialized bow staff, so it mentions how a regular bow staff, it would be a primitive, not a very advanced weapon and wouldn't cost much money. But then you have the custom bow staff, which has like the breakaway bow staff, breaks into two separate staffs, or even having a grapple bow or whatever other kind of feature you might want to have inside it. So things like that, just really to kind of jog your creative mind when it comes to superhero weapons. Metal knuckles, brass knuckles, or whatever the case is. Standard shield and how that works. And it mentions to you if you want to have a specialized shield, like someone like Captain America, that's actually going to go to the category of power weapons, which we dive into in the next chapter. So here you have equipment, binoculars, grappling hook, how that works, body armor, utility belt, backpack as a simple means of carrying things, because you're going to have ways to carry stuff if you're a superhero. You can't just say I have all these items on me. You're going to have a way to carry them, and that's kind of the system used to, rather than, as I mentioned in the previous video, instead of a weight system, just use a space system for carrying things. And here in the next chapter, we go into power weapons, like I just mentioned. Power weapons essentially are you taking weapons or creating weapons, and instead of putting your power points that you build your hero with into the hero, you put them into the weapon. The benefit is that you can give that weapon to one of the other players while you guys are in the middle of like combat or on a mission, and it just kind of spices things up a little bit. A lot of this within this game is all about you having fun and just spicing things up. So here are some examples on how you create the weapon, the breakdown how to create it, the breakdown of what goes into the weapon, breakdown of the weapon as an example. And then here goes some weapon example and power item examples. So this is the breakdown of how it works, and these are just some examples on items, so you get an idea of what you could do. and what you can build up a weapon to be, and a little sub rules on how certain things work. Then you come into the hero archetypes, which is a long list and a lot of pages that dives into this. Essentially, you already know what hero archetypes consist of and what it means, and this we'll just kind of dive into real quick on how the layout of it works. So here you got the Paragon, and essentially the Paragon is almost like your Superman type of character, but it also breaks it down into the idea that the Paragon is almost like more of an ideals. So we also throw in the Soldier Paragon and the non-caped Paragon. The difference being this is a little bit more like the Caped Paragon is more like Superman. The non-caped Paragon is a little bit more like Mr. Incredible. The Soldier Paragon is kind of more like Captain America. Some people may not think of him in that way, but like I said, I kind of think of the Paragon more of an ideal. At least that was broken down into this archetype. It's saying it's more of almost like an ideal than it is just a character stat breakdown. And then it goes into saying here in the italics area how you would play that character. So some of them don't have it because, you know, you're kind of self-explanatory, you would need, but the italics in this section is really you know, the game system speaking to you to say, hey, this is the best way to utilize this person, so you know as the players how you would best utilize the person. So it's the book talking to you straight directly. So for example, with the case of Soldier, it tells you the Soldier build may appear not much more than your average crime fighter, your crime fighter build over here that we're gonna get into. Not much more than your average crime fighter build, but is actually a lot more powerful in actual play. In a street level game, the Soldier can actually take on 2 or 3 regular guys at once, though not if they are heavily armed. You can choose to arm the Soldier build with guns as well, but his physical build is more than enough to take on your average guy with a gun. So it kind of is a way of like speaking to you guys, the player who wants to build an archetype like that, and let you know how to run them. Same thing with the crime fighter, that you kind of really know that in this game, the crime fighter, you're not just jumping into the situation and beating up 20 guys like it is inside the movies. You got to kind of play it a little differently because the average guy is probably close to your own abilities as well. So you got to do things where sometimes you might get into a fight, then you got to kind of reassess the situation, use some first aid, then go into the battle again, like, you know, sneak into another room and you fight another guy one at a time, whatever the case is. So you got your mass crime fighter / vigilante. These are all subcategories of whichever archetype. You got your gun-toting crime fighter / vigilante, and then you've got your archer crime fighter / vigilante breakdown. Then you got your warrior type, which dives into your warrior god, and then you have your warrior guardian type, and it explains what the difference is there. You got your brick type, which is generally self-explanatory. You got your alter form version of that, and you got your powerhouse version of that. The powerhouse version simply is not someone who alternates in the way they change, kind of more like the Thing or something like that, where your altered form is a little bit more like Hulk or something like that. Their blaster type, you have the glass cannon of your blaster type, and then you have your energy manipulator, who's kind of a little bit more diverse in their abilities, and you know, probably even has a few other stats that are better than just being a glass cannon where they can't take a hit. You got your armor suit type, which breaks down to your universal armor. You have your agile armor, and you have your powerhouse armor, which essentially bulks you up to be almost like a brick type in armor. You have your magic user, and the subcategories on that archetype is sorcerer, which is like your general, just like magic user. A subcategory of the sorcerer is a necromancer, and you know, still kind of the same thing, just your general magic user, but he's focusing in the areas of bringing people back from the dead, draining health energy to increase his own energy, you know, magic healing for the purpose of healing his resurrected creatures that he brings back. Then you have the occult detective, and then you have your sage, which is essentially just a more ancient, more powerful version of a magic user. And so you have that. Then you have the robotic archetype, which breaks down to robot, and then you also have the cyborg of that. And the differences between that, because there's a difference between a robot and a cyborg. The robots are not vulnerable to mental attacks. The cyborgs are. So that's a big difference. The side robots are also not vulnerable to a few different things, like poison and tranquilizer, though they might be vulnerable to a virus which acts the same way as poison would, or tranquilizer for them. So that all depends. Then you got shifters. Shifters are obviously people who shift their body in some kind of way. You have the shapeshifter who, changes what they look like. You have the size shifter who changes their size, and obviously there would be a form of combining both of those, but this is just an example. You could have a size and shapeshifter who that way you're changing into like a T-Rex really big, but in this case they're separate in this archetype example. And then last you have the stretcher, who also would be considered a shifter because he's changing up their body. So someone who stretches. Then you have the speedster, and there's no really subcategory for it, but the speedster, essentially their primary ability, as I mentioned in the power section before, is super fast perception. That's a really big deal, and it breaks down here, why that is and whatnot, and yeah, that's their basis of their powers. Obviously, they're going to be able to run fast and do all things like that sort, but their bread and butter is their super fast perception, which allows them to see things moving really fast, allows them to have a bonus to their defense, allows them to do things. Super fast perception also allows you to, maybe type something really quick, organize something really quick, like, do any, that includes all your movement and everything really fast. So that's kind of what allows you to do. And then we got the mentalist, and this breaks down to a telepathic power mind and a telepathic battle mind. So the difference is, one is using the powers more in like from range and whatnot. The other one is more like kind of like Psylocke, where you're using your abilities in close combat. With you have like energy fist, like not energy, mental. It looks like energy around your fist, but it's like a mental kind of, maybe blade around your fist or something like that for the telepathic. And the telekinetic works similar. So in that case, you'd have someone like telekinetic power mind is blasting things and moving things around almost like a Jedi and stuff like that. And telekinetic battle mind is something more similar to like, say, M. Bison from Street Fighter, where you have energy around your fist and you're punching things and you're doing things like that in the middle of your combat. You're doing these kind of fancy techniques, and you have this kind of mental energy around your fist and kicks, doing damage like that. Then we go into house rules, and house rules pretty much just kind of break down certain additives that give more depth to the game, like how we kind of break down distance and actions and turns. So if somebody is like, say, a distance away from you, rather than say they're this many feet, the game master will probably say something like they're 2 turns away from you, or maybe 2 actions away from you. What that might mean is that you have obviously 3 actions in a turn. So if like the enemy is 2 turns away from you, maybe you have a firearm on you, on that turn you get to shoot, they spend their full 3 actions running towards you. You get another chance to shoot at them, they spend their next action of their next turn, all their actions, trying to run up to you. Then on the 3rd turn, now they're able to start getting close combat with you, and that's like the way you would break it down. Oh, they're 2 turns away from you, they're 1 turn away from you, and that kind of gives you a sense of like, okay, if I got a gun, this is the benefit to me having range, or maybe I have energy projection, and like I can shoot energy blast or something like that sort. That's how you would base that. That's a kind of way to describe it. In terms of the benefit, group attacking, it breaks down group attacking. And then we also have dual wielding, and this gives you a more detailed version of dual wielding. As we did in the core book, it was just like a briefing, just to kind of not complicate things. But by now, since you already would have played a sample game, you would understand it better. So now it breaks it down to a more detailed version. Large objects are D20. It just kind of gives it a general category. So how you had the weapon section in the core book, now it breaks down to say that anything that's oversized, whether it's a lamppost, a car, etc., anything like that, just all falls into the category of D20, and that just kind of maxes it out. So like even if you got a giant boulder, it's all just D20, and that just covers all really big things. And The next chapter is game tips. Now, game tips just kind of help you get through certain rules that might be a little unclear. Like, for example, you might say, or just suggestions. So, for example, it says, what is the normal healing for a superhero? If you want to know, and it suggests here D4. So, a regular person would have no healing at all. A slightly enhanced kind of person might get 1 rank of healing, which would be 1 healing at the beginning of your turn. Every turn. And then like your standard hero healing, which is not like super fast healing but normal, would be a D4. So it kind of gives you a sense of what that means, what that represents. Another question is, how can I purchase fast swimming? Well, you would just purchase the same cost of running and use the speed for running but in the water. So you just adjust powers, and that gives you a sense to understand that you just adjust powers that are similar to other powers that may not exist, is how you just kind of incorporate those other abilities if you want to have them in it. Can I use telekinesis to manipulate and use weapons? Yes, you can. And in that case, like your force of your telekinesis or your mental power to move things is the same as your strength ability and add it to those weapons. So say if you're taking your mental stat and you're throwing a knife at somebody, you're going to use the D6 for the knife damage, and the force behind it, instead of you using strength, because you're not using strength, you're using your mental stat. The same thing with energy as well. You use your full energy stat to, if you're manipulating moving like an item with it, because you have the ability to move things with it, you would do that. That would take the place of your strength if you were throwing it, except you're using with that other ability. So that's how that works. It clarifies things like the growth power and stuff like that. Right here it says, growth power tells me to round down in strength, while weapon items that give strength stack tell me to round upward. So it kind of breaks down like little, that kind of little discrepancy in how that works. A few other things inside there. I'm not gonna go over all of them. There's not really much left anyway. And then it says, now you're ready to play, and that's it. And you pretty much completed the whole system, and you're ready to be, you're a master of the system now. And at that point, not only can you play as many games as you want to play at this point, but now you're ready to start changing the rules if you want, in terms of, adding abilities, powers, new weapons, other things that you want to do and add to the game. So that is it. That is the walkthrough of the system, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And there's gonna be obviously a link inside the video. I'm gonna put obviously I hope you ran from part 1 all the way to part 3. I'm gonna put a link inside the description for where you can purchase the book as well on Amazon. But yeah, so essentially that is the walkthrough of the system. Like I said, the purpose of the system was to get people to want to get on board and play easier, because some game systems are just very detailed with a lot of rules. This is so you could jump into it, learn it, and then start changing it the way you see fit, adding different things. You customize it right inside the book that you buy. Just write up annotations in it and really just make it your own. That's the idea of this. It's a base core system for you to kind of start and just build upon and expand upon. So I hope you guys get a chance to play the system. I hope you guys purchase the system. I hope you guys enjoy it, spread the word to your friends, and when you purchase it, leave a comment, leave likes. If you already have the game, leave some comments and likes inside the videos here. And yeah, just come aboard our family for the free play RPG system. All right, guys, that's gonna be it. I'm gonna wrap it up and catch you guys in the next video.